Hello. My camera is in the wrong place. Wait. Okay. That's better. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I got totally sidetracked, and I was like, wait, I need to get on stream, like, right now. How's everyone doing? Hi, War Dove. There was so much plot last stream. It was a little bit overwhelming, and I'm like, are we gonna get this much plot in this stream too? Because, I just have a feeling that this book is going to be very, yeah, plot heavy. Just like a lot of information. I mean, we're already like halfway through it, but we had so much just from last time that I'm expecting the rest of it to be like just packed. Yeah, your brain is spinning from finishing Monday's stream. Like, oh, you just finished it. Okay. Well, at least it's like fresh in your memory. Because I'm trying to just process like everything that happened and remember it. Oh, Henry, where did we leave off? Oh yeah, so we're in the time mirror, and it's 8 years ago, and we just had Moshi's conversation with the Emperor, in the Emperor of 8 years ago, and he was very, yeah, he was very pushy about not giving Moshi more time to wait before leaving with his troops, because it seems like he wants to, like, force him to not see Gumong, or force Gumong into a bad situation. Oh yeah, the sus emperor, exactly. Yeah, so now we're on page 179 for chapter 83, which is Gumong of 8 years ago. So I'm excited and nervous about this, but I'm just gonna get into it. In the boudoir of lingering fragrance, smoke rose in spirals. The floor was covered in soft red carpets, and the 8-grid bamboo door to the balcony had been flung open, revealing the rich red lacquer of the engraved banister beyond. Below the balcony, a foxglove tree stood in full bloom, its branches wreathed in a smoky haze of pink and purple. His gushishang was perched atop the wooden railing, one knee bent, holding a suona the color of weathered copper. That suona gleamed with a muted patina, the white silk ribbon tied to its shaft fluttering gently in the evening breeze. The holy weapon Fengbo. Surrounded by flowers, Gumong brought Fengbo to his lips. After testing out a few notes, he closed his eyes and played a throaty tune. Our sons went forth with swords held brave, their blood and bones in distant grave. Gumong had always used to prefer jaunty little folk tunes, but the melodies he now drew from the suona were heart-rendingly sorrowful. Cheeks puffed and lashes trembling, he tilted his head back in the fragmented sunlight streaming through the flowers and played his suona. Last year the self was yet intact. Last night this body spoke and laughed. The notes soared into the sky. Moshi said nothing. The world's bitterest olive seemed to be stuck in his throat. He stood at the door, gazing at Gumong's distant silhouette as if into a dream of a past lifetime. Hearing movement, the Peepaw girl turned in his direction. Her eyes widened, and she moved to kneel before Moshi waved a hand at her, indicating that she should remain quiet. Gumong was engrossed in his playing. The lips wrapped around the reed were red and wet, and his cheeks were endearingly puffed in concentration. As the setting sun fell on his handsome face, it gilded his black hair in rich gold. He sat crooked on the red railing, turning to soak in the sight of the drifting petals and luminous dusk as he played. By his hands, the silk ribbon tied around the swana swayed like the tide. Your loyalty I safely keep, your valiant deeds I freely speak. Slender fingers pressed down on the mottled swana, dancing smoothly as the world's softest breeze. For when these heroes' souls come home, throughout the land shall peace be known. Only when the song ended did Gumong slowly open his eyes, turning to smile. Look, this way we didn't lose the melody, so... Halfway through his explanation, he noticed the Peepaw girl's rigid and fearful expression. He turned and noticed Moshi, who had appeared at the door when he wasn't looking. His smile froze. After a beat of silence, Gumong amended his expression and adjusted his manner. He twirled the instrument in his slender fingers as he teased Moshi. Shihajun, how refined your tastes are today. Somehow you're at this pleasure house as well. Moshi heard a frighteningly hoarse voice. It was a moment before he recognized it as his own. Get out, he told the Peepaw girl. At once. Hold it, Gumong said. The girl fell still. Gumong smiled as he cocked his head. How bossy, Shihajun. How could you shoo away the girl I paid to spend the night with? Have you asked my permission? Gumong, Moshi rasped. Emotions swept violently through his chest. There are some things I want to discuss with you. Alone. What's there to discuss? Gumong asked. 2 single men sharing a room is rather suspicious, don't you think? Especially since you're a rising star and I'm doomed. What could we have to discuss? Gumong. Gumong raised a hand to disperse Fangbo, and the swana scattered into motes of glimmering light that merged back into his body. He leapt off the railing with his arms crossed, then looked down and chuckled. Stop fussing, gorgeous. Now that you're on the up and up and have caught Princess Mengzi's eye to boot, it would be terrible for your reputation to be seen in the company of an infamous libertine like me. We've been brothers for so many years, haven't we? Gogo would feel bad. The familiar cloying tone echoed in Moshi's ears. It wasn't a dream or an illusion. This was Gumong in the flesh, a man he could see and touch, the Gumong of 8 years ago, who was doing everything he could to distance himself from Moshi, to mock him, argue with him. Perhaps this grinning man had already made his plans to defect and leave quite soon. The realization birthed a violent impulse that pummeled Moshi in the chest. The rims of his eyes reddened. I won't leave, he said once more to the Peepaw girl. Get out. Gumong's eyebrows rose. Did you not hear me? I've already bought her for the evening. If you chase her away, who will keep me company through the endless night ahead? I'll stay, Moshi said. Gumong blinked his dark eyes. Do you know how to play Peepaw? I don't. Do you know how to sing me songs? I don't. Well then, why would I want you? Gumong smiled. You are hardly worth her price. Moshi didn't bother arguing with him. Gumong, I'm not going to the northern frontier today. Gumong cocked his head again, a deathly, infuriating smile lingering at the corners of his mouth. How nice for you. But what does that have to do with me? It does have to do with you. Give me one more night. I have some things to say. If I don't say them now... Moshi paused, looking squarely into Gumong's eyes. I'm afraid I'll never get the chance to say them after. Perhaps it was because he knew Gumong already intended to defect. When Moshi carefully observed the minute changes in Gumong's expression, he could see his features flicker slightly at this. Gumong lowered his lashes. I have no interest in dealing with military affairs tonight. I only want to lose myself in beauty. If you really want to talk, there will be plenty of time in the future. We can talk when you get back. I can't wait until then. More silence. The pipa songstress was caught in the middle, frozen like a wood carving or a clay figure, afraid to make a sound or move a muscle. At length, Gumong lowered his head. His chuckle was like a long sigh. "Why are you still clinging to me? I no longer have anything left." "I just want to talk." Smiling, Gumong stabbed every cruel word deep into Moshi's heart. "What's there to talk about? Your Shuga has nothing left to offer you. Please, princess, I just want to cheer myself up a bit, have a little fun. You should leave. Let me go." If Moshi had heard these words 8 years ago, he might have been deceived. He might have believed that Gumong was merely heartbroken and upset, that he'd make a full recovery after some time messing around. But the Moshi who stood before Gumong now had the knowledge of 8 years. To hear Gumong speak of fun only filled Moshi with an indescribable heartbreak and irony. "Just for one night," Moshi rasped. "Save tonight for me." Gumong sighed. "Don't make it sound so indecent. You have a long road to walk in the future. You need to guard your purity." "Am I still pure?" There was a deafening silence. Even the Pipa's girl's head had jerked up in shock. She swiftly turned her bloodless face back to the ground, trembling delicately. Finally, Gumong laid down that detestable smile. He looked at the man standing before him, at Moshi's stubborn and furious expression, his gaze inscrutable. "Have you lost your mind?" he whispered. "You know exactly what I mean." Gumong said nothing. Before he had been tempered in the Liao kingdom, Gumong had been wickedly sharp, seeming to possess a demonic sixth sense that told him precisely what his Moshidi was thinking. But today, as he looked at the man before him, Gumong felt a sense of unfamiliarity. He couldn't read him at all. Gumong had wanted to make Moshi furious with him before he left. But now, as Moshi glared at him fiercely from across the room, Gumong found those sharp eyes filled with a mix of emotions he couldn't understand. There was heartbreak there, and dread, and hurt. Yes, he seemed to look hurt. Gumong observed this almost helplessly. The rims of Moshi's eyes were already red with unshed tears. Moshi clenched his jaw, eyes stinging. In a rough yet determined voice, he continued, "I've long lost any purity I had. I don't care about these things. You can't chase me away." Gumong had no retort. He felt more and more helpless, more and more uneasy. In the end, he conceded. He couldn't change Moshi's mind. He sighed and turned to the Peepaw girl. "Miss Fei Tian, my apologies. There's a madman here. I must ask you to withdraw." Miss Fei Tian finally heard the words she'd been waiting for. She excused herself and practically fled the boudoir of lingering fragrance. Only the two men remained in the richly appointed room, perfumed with incense. Gumong came in from the balcony. He waved his hand to close the wooden doors, then turned into the room. A gentle flick of his fingertip lit the candle on the copper crane rack. Only then did he approach Moshi, coming dangerously close without the slightest hesitation, until mere inches remained between them. Gumong looked up, a question in his dark eyes and provocation in his gaze. Their breaths rose and fell in the space between them. He reached out to stroke the line of Moshi's elegant jaw. "Look at you," he whispered. "Well done. You made such a fuss, even the girl I paid for left. Are you pleased with yourself?" Gumong sized him up as he would a brothel girl, scrutinizing Moshi's face. After a moment, his gaze slid down to Moshi's pale lips. He brushed his thumb over the softness of his mouth, caressing it. "Since you were so keen to rush over here and fight for my favor, I'll allow you to accompany me for one last night," Gumong murmured. "After tonight, princess, we'll keep to ourselves. No more of this." He grabbed Moshi by the lapels and pulled him into a kiss. There came a muffled groan. Wet lips captured cool ones, and a clever tongue snuck into Moshi's mouth to dance like a butterfly tasting nectar, drinking in his breath, his scent. This same Gu Shixiang, who spoke with cruel indifference, was always the one to make the first move when they kissed. He enjoyed it, caressing Moshi with those soft and glossy lips, seducing him with those dense lashes, passionately pressing his tightly muscled abdomen against Moshi's, almost as if he wanted to become one with him. But it was only ever almost, wasn't it? Gumong's forwardness was the cause, first, for Moshi's misunderstanding, then later his intoxication. In the end, the largest part of what was left for Moshi was heartbreak. He remembered vividly their first union on the night he came of age. His heart had felt steeped in honey. He'd assumed Gumong loved him back. He'd assumed that from then on, he could lock his Shixiang to his side with assurance and take him for himself. But in the light of day, Gumong had told him the events of that night were but a momentary impulse. After that, they shared many such momentary impulses. He drove Gumong into delirium so many times, melted him into soft spring waters until Gumong, in his tent, couldn't help but say that he liked him. Until Gumong, in his arms, couldn't help say that he wanted this. Until Gumong, in his stare, couldn't help but say that he loved him. But once the storms of passion cleared, Gumong would change, waving it all off as a moment of indulgence. So Moshi had managed to lay claim to his body again and again, taking for himself all of the softness hidden within that chitinous shell. Chitinous shell? I don't know if I'm saying that right. But these repeated entanglements, impossibly intimate, yet impossibly sorrowful, only left Moshi ever more lost and heartbroken. He waited for Gumong to believe him, hoped for Gumong to treat him with sincerity. But no matter how many times they lost themselves in each other, no matter what nonsense Gumong babbled as he shivered with passion, when day broke, never would Gumong acknowledge the feelings between them. Moshi couldn't understand this. He couldn't understand why Gumong would curl so close if he didn't love him back. Why Gumong would tumble with him between the sheets if he didn't plan on spending a lifetime with him. He understood even less why Gumong could now embrace and kiss him so freely when he intended to defect. Clearly Gumong already wanted to leave. He already knew he would leave, that they would be torn apart by their loyalties and meet next with blades drawn. How could he be so calm and composed? Gumong abruptly hissed and pushed Moshi away. Pressing a hand to his lip, he stared at Moshi in shock. Were you born in the year of the dog? What are you biting me for? The rims of Moshi's eyes were wet and red, his expression betraying shame and anger, hatred and sorrow. In the glow of the lamplight, he stared into Gumong's eyes. Only after several seconds did he brusquely ask, "What do you take me for?" "You're the one who wanted to take Miss Fei Tian's place and keep me company." Gumong paused. He had more to say, but the hurt on Moshi's face brought him up short. As he watched the young man standing before him, his chest heaving as he tried yet failed to stay calm, Gumong's resolve suddenly wavered. Oh, chitinous? I know that's an insect thing, but I think there's like multiple video games with chitin armor. I guess it's chitin. I always thought it was chitin. That probably makes more sense. And also, yeah, ouch. Would Gumong really bet a man for no reason other than pleasure? He who is known as the Beast of the Altar, who commanded countless troops, would he willingly lie with a man 3 years his junior and allow himself to be fucked into delirium with no reservations? No, he hadn't made a carnal mistake because of a silly impulse. nor did he repeat it just to chase a fleeting pleasure. In truth, Gumong had long since developed a fondness he barely recognized. From this rose the impulse, and from this the pleasure. His heart had stopped belonging to himself long ago. It was just that he was unwilling to admit or accept it. Gumong looked into Moshi's reddened eyes and sighed. He lifted a hand, wanting to touch his young and handsome face. "Oh, you... if I'm not here in the future..." Moshi's eyes filled with tears. He couldn't hold back any longer. He reached out and wrapped his arms around Gumong, hugging him so tightly, so forcefully, so deeply, as if he wanted to break Gumong apart and smuggle him into his bones, as if he wanted to use his own flesh to imprison Gumong's. Only then could he keep this man with him forever. Only thus could he prevent that future betrayal, that future confrontation, and the dagger in his heart. Gumong sighed in his arms. "What's gotten into you today?" "I just want you to be well." Moshi rested his chin on the top of Gumong's head as he held him tight. "If there's any sadness or grievance in your heart, won't you tell me?" Moshi asked hoarsely. "Could you let me share the burden? Could you not overthink it? Don't bear it all alone." "Moshi." Moshi cupped the back of Gumong's head with a large hand, folding him even more tightly, even more deeply into his embrace. The pain of regaining what was lost, only to soon lose what he'd regained, set every inch of him to shaking, reawakened every piece of him. Moshi held this Gumong of 8 years past like he was embracing a wandering ghost that had finally come home. He closed his eyes, his straight brows drawing together as he murmured, "Shishong, if there's something on your mind, could you not hide it from me? Could you not hide it from me?" The person in his arms stiffened slightly, but remained silent. After a time, Gumong pushed him away. He pressed a hand to Moshi's chest, keeping them at arm's length. Those eyes, black as night, calmly met Moshi's. "Shihajun," he asked lightly, "what is it you think I've hidden from you?" That's the end of the chapter. And, Henry, I agree that is truly a prose moment. We're at chapter 84, which is Lu Jianxing of 8 years ago. As Gumong asked this question, an indescribable apathy came over his face. His mischievous smile had disappeared, but the sharp viciousness within him was yet to be unsheathed. He looked at Moshi the way he'd look at a stranger. Of course Moshi couldn't ask if he had thought of defecting. He closed his eyes and murmured, "I know you're still greatly displeased with Chonghua and his imperial majesty. Don't." Gumong raised a finger to Moshi's lips. He stared at Moshi, then broke into a grin, a touch of sweetness surfacing on his features, along with a profuse danger. "Sleeping around is one thing, gorgeous, but running my mouth is another entirely. Now that I've lost my rank, my remaining soldiers are imprisoned, and my brother is set to be executed at the Eastern Market in 3 days' time. Now you come ask me whether I'm displeased with His Imperial Majesty. Do you want to saddle me with yet another sentence and see me even more hopelessly damned?" "I've never wanted to do that to you." "You don't want to now, but that doesn't mean you won't in the future. A beauty's favor always comes with danger, to say nothing of one as beautiful as you." Gumong traced Moshi's lips with a finger, then down to his chin to tilt his face upward. "I can't help but be wary." Oh, there's art. There's art of this. Okay, we're looking at this now. In any other situation, I would enjoy this, but, you know, yeah. Gumong, Moshi looked at him through somber, sorrowful eyes as he said roughly, "My feelings for you are sincere. You nobles have gotten too used to doling out rewards. You gift jewelry to please women and power to please men. When that no longer works, you decide to make a gift of your sincerity as well. How could I dare accept it?" Gumong sighed. "People's hearts are ever changing. Even His Imperial Majesty was devoted to me once. Back when I was fighting to expand Chonghua's borders, I never imagined that the next ruler would treat me like this after taking the throne." He paused. "I can't understand you people." "Including me?" Another pause. The corners of Gumong's mouth deepened into a smile. He had an uncanny ability. When he was happy, the traces of his smile made others feel they were bathed by a warm spring breeze. But when he was upset, that spring breeze became a wintry rain. He patted Moshi's face. "Including you, darling." Moshi grasped his fingers before he could move them away. Gumong looked up slowly, lashes fluttering. "Let go." But Moshi didn't. He was undoubtedly hurt and despairing, but these emotions were like darkening storm clouds, lending his aura a deep stubbornness and shadow. "How would you like me to prove it?" Moshi tightened his grip on Gumong's fingers, light flickering unsteadily in his eyes. "Gumong, at this point, are you only willing to believe people of common birth like you? Would you listen if Liu Jianxing were the one standing before you?" Gumong's expression didn't change. "Surely Shihajun jests," he said lightly. "I am no more than a lowly slave. You're all the ones who never believed my words. When was it my choice to believe or not?" As Moshi studied him, it dawned on him that, right now, Gumong already wore the same expression as that traitorous general who had turned on his nation. In the depths of his eyes, his departure was a sure thing. He was like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to throw himself into the boundless dark below at a moment's notice. Moshi swallowed. It turned out that there had been many signs. He had just been too young to understand Gumong's true feelings, to the point that he'd missed all these hints that foretold the future. He closed his eyes and slowly released Gumong's hand. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Why are you apologizing to me?" "For not being at your side the day you and your troops returned." Gumong said nothing for a moment, then smiled. "You were still fighting on the front lines at the time, so I understood. Anyway, what would you have done even if you'd been there? Could you have changed anything?" He sat down at the table covered with vibrant shoe-style embroidery and poured 2 cups of tea. Gumong's arms were still golden and firm with muscle, not bone-pale as they would later become. He pushed 1 cup toward Moshi and took a sip from the other. "Shihajun, this punishment was the new emperor's idea. It's not something you could change by pleading on my behalf. I've never resented you for not being there that day. But to be honest, our paths were never the same. Different people walk different roads, that's all. You don't owe me an apology." "This apology isn't for you alone," Moshi said. "Will you let me finish?" Gumong tossed him a careless smile. "Sure, go ahead. If it's not just for me, who else is it for?" "The 70,000 souls at Phoenix Cry Mountain." Gumong fell silent. "I'm sorry, Gumong. Chonghua owes you 70,000 named graves." The smile on Gumong's face faded. His lashes fluttered, then lowered as he sighed. "It's been so long since that happened, Moshi. I've already gotten over it. Why bring it up again?" Moshi looked at this man who spent his days in a brothel making songstresses play the soul song, this man who claimed to have gotten over it. After a few beats of silence, he said, "I will petition His Imperial Majesty for the gravestones you asked for." Gumong had been toying with the cup in his hand, but his head shot up when he heard this. For some reason, a change came over his face. "Who asked you to meddle?" "I'm not meddling," Moshi said. Gumong scowled, a look that gave every impression of a wary beast. "Listen up, Moshi. Even if my army's been disbanded, they're still men that I led. Dead or alive, they are my people, not yours. You have no right to act on my behalf." "It's what they deserve, what each martyred hero is due. You were right to ask for them. If your plea goes unanswered, I will ask in your stead." The room was silent, like they had sunk to depths of the sea. Gumong glared at Moshi, but he didn't utter a word. After a moment, he lowered his head and closed his eyes. For the first time since Moshi entered the room, he saw a crack in Gumong's cold mask, the sorrow behind it surging forth like a tide. Cast in shadow, Gumong hung his head and chuckled. "Shihajun, you must be kidding. What martyred heroes? They were no more than ants." Moshi made no reply. How could ants be worthy of gravestones? Even if they were erected, it would be an awful joke. Who would make offerings to them? Who would honor them? Gumong gripped the cup in his slender fingers. He stared at the tea inside, at the reflections on the surface. Even if they were erected, they would be glorified heaps of rubble. I've long stopped demanding it. Moshi watched him carefully. "There's no need for you to involve yourself. This is a matter for us lowborn. It's nothing to do with Shihajun." Gumong. There seemed to be something stuck in Moshi's throat. After a long interval, he asked, "What can I do so you stop being like this?" "You don't have to do anything at all." Gumong set the cup back down on the table. "Just be good and leave me alone. Time heals all things." But time can't heal hatred. Time can't unpick the knot in your heart, nor can it stop you from staking it all and tossing yourself off the cliff. It will only wear you down into something unrecognizable, bleach your black eyes to blue, cover your body in scars, and grind your reputation into the mud. Time can only bring me your ruins. Gumong, I've come from the future. I've already seen how this ends. Each breath pained him like the twist of a knife. Moshi endured the agony, his nails sinking deeper into his palm as he whispered, "What about after?" "After? What are you going to do after?" "What else can I do? Revel in the pleasures of the flesh." Revel in the pleasures of the flesh, Gumong said. "His Imperial Majesty stripped my rank, but he at least let me keep my money. From now on, I'll live however I please. It's not a bad deal." "There's nothing else you want?" "Nothing at all." Moshi parted his lips but didn't speak. He wanted to recklessly blurt out, "Stop lying to me. I know everything that happens in the next 8 years. I know what kind of doomed path you'll take if I leave you be." But he couldn't. The ancient books recorded that if a traveler in the time mirror were to reveal they had come from the future, they would be trapped there forever, unable to escape. Did we know that before? Are we just finding that out now? That's terrifying. Moshi wanted so very much to understand the truth of the past and what Gumong had been thinking then. He wanted to know what he could have done to stop Gumong from stepping into the darkness. How many weights pressing on Gumong's heart needed release? His Imperial Majesty's cruel words, Gumong's own despair. What else was there? Were there other burdens Moshi didn't know of, or that he had overlooked? In the warm, dimly lit room, Moshi stood beside Gumong from 8 years in the past, mind racing like a trapped beast. Weights on his heart. Were there any others he didn't know of? Realization dawned. striking cold into Moshi's heart. He suddenly recalled an old matter he had forgotten. Back then, when he had returned from the northern frontier and heard of Gumong's treason, he couldn't believe it. As if mad, he had questioned anyone who might know anything. Someone had told him this. After you left, His Imperial Majesty summoned Gumong to the palace. He saw Gumong idling in such low spirits and thought it a shame to waste someone like him, that he could still be of use. So he gave Gumong a mission. Gumong accepted and left Chonghua, but he never returned to make his report. Moshi had made relentless interrogations, trying to uncover what the Emperor had asked of Gumong, but no one knew for sure. I heard it was some minor matter, something about getting back on his feet, but Gumong didn't want to listen and left quite quickly. He didn't even stay in the hall for the time it takes a stick of incense to burn. It should have been a very small assignment, really. In the end, the only answers he got were about how the Emperor wanted Gumong to pull himself together. But Gumong... Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I had to yawn for like 5 minutes, and I was trying to hold it back. In the end, the only answers he got were about how the Emperor wanted Gumong to pull himself together. But Gumong turned a deaf ear. Moshi had taken note of this at the time, but as the years passed, that detail gradually faded from his memory. Yet now, as he recalled it, his hands grew sweaty, fingers curling into fists. He had just witnessed for himself His Imperial Majesty's attitude. The Emperor meant to test Gumong's loyalty. Why would he so solicitously ask after Gumong's welfare at a time like this? It couldn't possibly have been the real reason behind the mission. Moshi examined Gumong's face in the rosy candlelight. If Gumong hadn't yet decided to defect, then Lu Jianxing's death and the Emperor's assignment could very well be the two things that finally pushed Gumong to jump into the abyss of vengeance. His heart galloped in his chest. The more he spoke with these people of the past and considered the course of events, the more he sensed strange clues everywhere. Something else must have happened back then. There must have been a piece he had missed. What was the last mission the Emperor had given Gumong? The only stroke of luck was that time passed differently in the time mirror. 1 or 2 days in the mirror corresponded to a much briefer period on the outside. Murong Chuyi and Zhang Yeshui couldn't defeat the Shangao and rescue them that quickly. He still had time. He could investigate what happened 8 years ago. In the end, Moshi left the brothel. Despite how deeply he longed to talk with Gumong in his right mind, his rational judgment still won out. He stepped back into the street, seeking out a third person from the past. I wonder who that could be. Within a cell in the deepest recesses of the Imperial prison, a single oil lamp burned, its flame a dark blue glow. There was no other source of light. Lu Jianxing lay on the icy stone bed with one leg jauntily propped up, humming as he tossed a pair of dice he'd gotten from who knew where. He wore a set of loose, clean prisoner's robes, the snowy white lapels setting off his tanned and chiseled face. Possibly because his execution was at hand, or possibly because he had a knack for making friends, the jailers hadn't abused him. The cell was furnished with the little table, on which a pot of wine had even been placed. By the look of it, it was likely the flower wine issued to all the jailers in Chonghua. The first person Moshi had needed to see when he entered the time mirror was the Emperor, an inexperienced new ruler. The second person was Gumong, an old friend who hadn't yet lost his souls. The third person he had to see was Lu Jianxing, a dead man from his memories. Moshi stopped outside his cell and turned to the warden who led him there. "You may go." "Yes, sir." Lu Jianxing hadn't yet recognized Moshi's voice. He thought the prison guard had gotten bored and come to chat with him, so he pulled himself up to a sloppy seat on the bed. He propped a cheek on one hand, tossing the pair of dice in the other. Divination and fortune-telling, the journey of fate. The words of a man on his deathbed always strike true. And there's a footnote for divination. Divination, Jianxing, sounds similar to Liu Jianxing's name. It's neat. Your Liu Ge can part the veil of the heavens with just 2 dice. 20 silver cowries to have your fortune read, double if you're asking about your fated other half. As Moshi entered his cell, he pulled back the hood of his black cape. Liu Jianxing flicked a lazy glance up, only to freeze at the sight of Moshi's face. He missed the dice as they fell. They tumbled to the edge of the bed. Xiejun. Moshi swept a glance over the dice and the wine on the table. After a pause, he said, "This is the first time I've seen someone imprisoned in such conditions." Liu Jianxing lay back down on the bed, limbs askew, and grinned. One hand groped for his fallen dice. "Would you like your fortune told? This stall of mine is closing up for good in 3 days' time. You'd better not miss this chance." Moshi sat down across from him. "Why don't you read your own fortune?" "I already have." Liu Jianxing waggled his stinky feet. "I, phony prophet Liu, am a general whose successes cost 10,000 withered bones, but I can wither 10,000 bones even in failure." And there's a footnote for 10,000 withered bones. A line from the poem 2 Poems in the Year 879 by Cao Song, which laments the countless soldiers that must be sacrificed for a great general to be awarded his accolades. "I've spent most of a year in this cell and have read my fortune hundreds of times. Nothing much to see there." Moshi raised a hand and cast a soundproof barrier in the cell. "What are you doing?" Liu Jianxing asked. "I've come to ask you a question." As usual, Liu Jianxing never took things seriously. "About your fated match?" "About injustice. And guys, we have art. Let's see. Yeah, he's in that cell. It's very dark. Liu Jianxing fiddled silently with the dice in his hands. Only after a long beat did he chuckle. "How noble of you." Henry. I think almost everyone in this is hot. I think that's the assumption that I'm going to make. "Gumong doesn't want to see you go, so I'm here to ask, Liu Jianxing, is there some injustice regarding the battle at Phoenix Crime Mountain that you wish to make known?" Liu Jianxing tossed the dice onto the stone bed. Displeased with the result, he picked them up and tossed them again. Only after many repeated tries did he finally roll a pair of 6s and stop. Looking up, he bared his teeth at Moshi in a grin. "Yes, His Imperial Majesty arrested me because I killed the envoy. I'll fucking take the blame for what I did, but because of my mistake, Chonghua punished Gumong and 30,000 survivors. Why is that, if I may ask?" There were not many people who could stir Moshi to anger with a few words, but Liu Jianxing was one of them. What did he mean, take the blame? This impertinent man only understood instant gratification. He'd never cared for strategy or collaboration. He did as he pleased, and his last hot-headed impulse had sent Gumong into impossible circumstances. Moshi gritted his teeth. Why couldn't you control yourself? Regardless of how improper or suspicious that envoy's actions were, did you have the right to execute him? It is nice to be reminded. That's the end of the chapter. We're at chapter 85, which is the plan of 8 years ago. Liu Jianqing smiled. What's done is done. I've already killed him. What else is there to say? Liu Jianqing, Moshi snapped, dark brows drawing together in anger. Do you know what things are like on the outside? What are they like? After the defeat at Phoenix Cry Mountain, where your 70,000 comrades died in battle, the remaining 30,000 were taken into custody and await their sentence even now. The dead are without gravestones, and the living have no way forward. And Gumong, all his achievements have been erased. His Imperial Majesty will never again use him for matters of importance. Almost everything he cares for has been destroyed, yet all you can say is, what's done is done. Liu Jianqing listened in silence, though his rough fingers never stopped moving the dice. After a moment, his mouth split into a mocking grin. Isn't it a good thing to never again be used by the Emperor for important matters? Moshi stared in shock. What did Liu Jianqing mean? Liu Jianqing and Gumong had grown up together and were thus inseparable. But Moshi understood little about this brother of Gumong's. Countless times he had seen Liu Jianqing embrace Gumong and ruffle his hair as the pair of them laughed uproariously. He saw, too, that Gumong would regularly help Liu Jianqing dress his wounds. It bothered him, no matter that it was proven again and again that Liu Jianqing adored women and Gumong harbored no feelings beyond friendship for him. Still, Moshi was bothered. The sight of Liu Jianqing made his skin crawl with irritation. Likewise, Liu Jianqing had a poor impression of Moshi. From his perspective, his childhood buddy had suddenly, for some inexplicable reason, gained an aristocratic young master as a bosom friend. Of course the intrusion displeased him. Plus, this little aristocrat constantly monopolized Gumong's free time. Oh, he needed Gumong to accompany him while patrolling or cultivating, and sometimes, when Liu Jianqing was wounded, that rich young master would promptly also get hurt, forcing Gumong to rush back and forth between them. The first time it happened could be chalked up to coincidence, but when it kept on happening, Liu Jianqing began to suspect that the Mo brat was doing it on purpose. And so Liu Jianqing's initial courtesy toward Moshi turned chilly. When the two crossed paths, they would pretend not to see each other. If Gumong was watching, they would half-heartedly nod in greeting. Given this standoffish relationship of theirs, Moshi's understanding of Liu Jianqing remained entirely superficial. Moshi had presumed Liu Jianqing would at least feel regret or shame for the disaster he'd brought down on his brother's head. Never had he imagined that Liu Jianqing would look as if he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. At the sight of Moshi's bloodless face, Liu Jianqing stretched his limbs into a more comfortable sprawl and continued to toss his dice. In any case, I'm a dead man walking. There's no harm in saying what I truly think. Moshi gritted his teeth. What other disgraceful last words do you have? They're not so disgraceful, Liu Jianqing snickered. I think I've been awfully clever. It's just that I had to sacrifice a bit more than I should have, but I've more or less achieved my aim. What do you mean? Baring his teeth like a wolf, Liu Jianqing shot Moshi a glance designed to provoke. Eyes never moving from Moshi, he said, Do you all think I killed that envoy because I felt him suspicious? That I was further enraged by his disrespect, so I beheaded him on impulse? Moshi's lips parted. Is that not so? He asked softly. Liu Jianqing swung one leg over the other and scoffed. Shihe Jun, do you think so little of me and Mong are? He spoke lazily, his expression open and uninhibited. Mong Ar and I grew up together. Did you think he would appoint me his deputy general? Were I really so stupid and reckless? He's a demon of war, not an idiot who lets his emotions call the shots. The candle within the cell silently shed its waxen tears. I'm sorry, Meat Bun. What? Okay. Liu Jianxing's words almost made Moshi tremble in fear. You did it on purpose. I've fought with him on so many battlefields for so many years. When have I ever done anything so irreversible on purpose? Liu Jianxing said casually, Yes, I did it on purpose. Air whipped through the cell as Moshi yanked Liu Jianxing from the bed and shoved him against the stone wall. 2 lamps guttered out and the cell sank into gloom, but Moshi's eyes seemed only brighter. In the darkness, they glimmered with flame, sparking with disbelieving wrath. His knuckles strained. He was on the verge of simply snapping Liu Jianxing's neck. Liu Jianxing, are you fucking insane? Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined his life. Liu Jianxing's face flushed red in Moshi's grip. He looked down at Moshi with a single breath remaining in his lungs. Even so, he still plastered a mocking smile onto his face. Having me ruin his life is still better than seeing him ruin his own and the lives of others. Liu Jianxing ground each syllable between his teeth as light flashed in his eyes. Still better than letting him lead a flock of idiots driven by a dream doomed to fail, to risk their lives on behalf of you people. Moshi was choking him so hard that vessels stood out on his forehead, but he still said contemptuously, risking their lives, like fools. His imperial majesty was right to strip him of his power. Upon hearing that honest shout, Moshi dropped him as if bitten by a wild dog. He stood there panting, hands shaking in fury. He felt cold all over. How many truths from 8 years ago were hidden in bloodshed and death? The instant Moshi let go, Liu Jianxing doubled over and coughed violently. Only after many great, gasping breaths did he turn his face up. Moshi's voice sounded hollow and empty. You ruined him on purpose? Wrong. Liu Jianxing licked his lips and rose slowly. I saved him. Moshi looked at him as if he'd heard the most absurd joke. Saved him? Yes, said Liu Jianxing. How could a noble young master like yourself, born into the lap of luxury, understand our circumstances? Ever since the late emperor made an exception for Mong-ar, started making use of him, he's fought countless battles without ever tasting defeat. But the higher he flies, the more inexplicable the criticism slung at him. I wonder, Shihajun, if you've heard the things they say. Moshi fell silent. He didn't know whence those slanderous rumors had originated, but they were like innumerable demons and monsters dancing wildly behind the curtain of night. How could Moshi not have heard them? When Gumong had been only a minor officer, there were a few comments and jabs. But as he gained more valor and distinguished himself further, those cold and malicious words turned into a swarm of snakes, slipping from unknown tongues to wrap themselves inextricably around Gumong's limbs. He's just biding his time, hiding who he really is. Beast of the altar? What real ability has he got? And don't you think his strategies and illusions feel a bit dark? He's too opportunistic. I've heard he even dabbles in black magic spells of the Liao kingdom. He's a slave, after all, not a proper cultivator born of a noble house. Of course he'd have dishonest ambitions. If his imperial majesty keeps trusting him so, pardon my disrespect, ill will befall Chonghua sooner or later. There were even those who directly compared Gumong to that villain from the past. He's just the next Hua Po-an. The nation's inviting disaster upon itself. Watching Moshi's expression, Liu Jianxing laughed, his slender lips curving. It seems Shihajun isn't totally deaf to it all. Stepping over to the little table, Liu Jianxing sat down. He tossed the pair of dice onto its surface, then poured a measure of wine for himself and took an unhurried sip. Mong-ar has pretty much heard it all. It made me furious, but he would always say there was no need to take these words to heart. He would say that as long as we proved ourselves, these voices would falter by and by. Blue, it absolutely does. It does sound familiar. More and more people would understand that not all slaves would be like Hua Poan. There were those like him, Gumang, and me, Liu Jianxing. Liu Jianxing smiled bitterly. He's just naive. Or maybe it's not that he's naive, it's that he always sees the best in things. Despite living in the mud, he still insists on raising his head to look up into the boundless sunlight. Yes, Moshi said softly. He's always been like this. You probably understand why he's a war god, Liu Jianxing continued. He's never faltered, no matter how difficult the battle. He always made it seem like it was no big deal. He had an endless, inexhaustible passion, more than enough. He sneered. More than enough for the leech that is Changhua to suck from him till bloated. It was a cruel thing to say. That's what you think, Moshi fixed Liu Jianxing with an icy glare. That's why he's the war god and not you. He's the one who wanted to take new territory. He's the one who wanted to prove himself. Liu Jianxing smiled grimly but said nothing. Not everyone who steps onto the battlefield imagines that their blood is being drained, Moshi said. Gumang had his own ideals. He said he chose this path for himself with no regrets. Ha ha, ha ha ha, no regrets, no regrets. Liu Jianxing threw his head back and laughed. The chains on his wrists and ankles clanged as they swayed. That's why I said he's stupid. Look at him. So many years of merits and honor, and what has he proved? Did those voices pecking at him stop? All he's done is make those old nobles fearful as they see a face that looks more and more like Hua Poan's with each passing day. After so many years of him constantly proving himself, I've never seen anyone who hates him change their tune. I've only seen those who once tolerated him begin to suspect him at every turn. Tell me, Shihajun, what did he prove? Didn't he merely prove he can mobilize troops just as well as Hua Poan? Moshi couldn't contain his fury any longer. Then what do you want? To prevent him from continuing on this stupid path by giving him no other choice but to follow in Hua Poan's footsteps in actuality? I think that's kind of what happened. Liu Jianxing slapped the table. I just hoped he would stop. Wine splashed over the rim of the cup, and the dice tumbled on the stained old table. I just hoped he would stop, Liu Jianxing repeated. These words seemed to have struck something tender in that coarse heart. His eyes lost focus, and his voice softened as he mumbled. I just wanted him to wake up, to stop, to not be so naive. Liu Jianxing closed his eyes. His face was flushed with emotion, but his voice had gone hoarse with the helplessness of despair. It's been so many years. His future seemed so bright. You saw him taken off the slave registry. You saw his fame spread throughout the land as he was showered in praise. But when I look at him, I see him standing on an iceberg about to melt, surrounded by sharks waiting to tear him apart the instant he touches the water. He looked up at Moshi. Power threatens kings. Not just for him. This goes for you, too. Shihajun, can you afford to have these words applied to you? Moshi said nothing, but he refused to take it seriously. Liu Jianxing took up a white and red die again, slowly spinning it on the table. You see, he's gone undefeated. His army's gone undefeated. No one could find a real reason to act against him, but he can't go a lifetime without defeat. And the consequences of defeat for him are destined to be more tragic than that of any other general with the power to pose a threat. Moshi tensed. Without a shred of courtesy, Liu Jianxing said, because, from the beginning, he was no more than a dog you people picked off the streets. If someone had dared to say these things to Moshi before he entered the time mirror, he would have roundly denied it. But he'd just heard the Emperor himself speak those words. Gumong is nothing but a dog. He had no way to refute what Liu Jianxing was saying. The more truths he uncovered, the more his heart ached, and the more his blood chilled. The fire in his chest seemed to be slowly guttering out. Liu Jianxing sighed. The new emperor has recently ascended. Mong-ar hasn't angered him so much. Mong-ar hasn't angered him much. At this point, his defeat because of my actions only resulted in him being stripped of his power and dismissed from his position. His life isn't under threat. If he had continued to behave so recklessly, if he had suffered defeat at the pinnacle of power, he would die mutilated and scorned. Moshi's throat was raw. So you did it on purpose. Yes. Liu Jianxing smiled lightly and crossed his arms. I have divine omniscience. I can see heaven's will. Yes, I made him lose on purpose. I wrecked his future on purpose. Reality has proven the accuracy of my guess. Look, sure enough, he has nothing left. Moshi's fingertips were trembling. He stared into Liu Jianxing's face. Today he had finally gained some understanding of what kind of person Liu Jianxing was. A madman who risked it all. Moshi forced out each word from between his clenched teeth. Liu Jianxing, don't you know 70,000 soldiers died because of you? Better than 700,000 to come. Don't you see that you destroyed Gumong's life's work? Better than for him to end up drawn and quartered, tortured to death. Wrathful fire gripped Moshi. His heart throbbed violently. Fingertips trembling, he grabbed Liu Jianxing and slapped him fiercely across the face. That is the end of the chapter. And it's 4:04, so it's a perfect time for me to take like a 10-minute break. Well, we're getting some information today. And, yeah, oof, blue, exactly. Okay, wait, I'm looking for my little be right back card. I'm gonna go, chew on, what just happened. And, in like 10 minutes, we will come back and probably have more suffering. So, I'll see y'all in a bit. Moo. Hello. I'm back. I've returned from my very peaceful break, and we're now wading back into war. Oh, hi. Hi, Nina. You know, there's Nina and Rena, and also a Tina who, like, follows the stream sometimes. So I'm... my brain bank has broken, so I have to think about it for a second. Yeah, you might have missed a lot. Yeah. And this chapter title is very ominous. We're on chapter 86, which is called Fall from Grace. So we're gonna learn more about that, I guess. The slap landed with an audible crack, with Moshi's full strength behind it. Liu Jianxing's cheeks swelled almost instantly, and blood ran from the corner of his mouth. Moshi stared at him viciously, the rims of his eyes a bloody red. His voice shook with every syllable. What right do you have to decide for him? What right do you have to choose for him? Do you know what desperate straits he'll be in after your death, after the deaths of his 70,000 comrades who can never return? Are you trying to push him into the abyss, Liu Jianxing? Fire blazed in his eyes. You wanted to preserve his life, he howled, but have you ever really understood his heart? Liu Jianxing's voice rose as well, his blood-stained lips parting. His heart soars too high. Sooner or later, it'll have him strung up. What do you know? Their exchange was like the clashing of two swords, or a battle between beasts. You were born to a life of luxury. Your so-called troubles were nothing more than some family drama. What have you experienced of the hopelessness that comes from your life hanging by a thread of another's whim? Do you know how hard it's been for Gumong to make it this far? Liu Jianxing seemed to choke with anger and despair. He's just a stupid donkey. You people took the slave collar off his neck and dangled rank and fortune as carrots in front of him. But did anything change? He's still shedding blood and sweat, pulling the grindstone for you. But somehow he's stupidly delighted about it. At this point, Liu Jianxing helplessly tilted his head back and covered his eyes with an arm as he rasped. But a donkey is still a donkey. One day, when he gets lazy or tired, when he can't walk anymore, he'll still be consigned to the slaughterhouse. He let out a long sigh. What he can't see, I'll help him understand. What he understands but can't let go of, I'll force him to give up. He thought he owed the old emperor a debt, so I waited. I waited for the new emperor to ascend before making my move, so that he wouldn't be scorning the old emperor's favor. What haven't I thoroughly considered for his sake? Liu Jianxing, the emotion Moshi was suppressing in his throat, surged like lava. You are insane. I'm not insane. He is. Liu Jianxing lowered his arm. His eyes were faintly red, but the softness in them had been completely cast away, leaving only a ruthless hatred. He stared at Moshi. How crazy does Mang-Er have to be to believe he can single-handedly change the opinion of all the people of Changhua and the 9 provinces when it comes to slaves? How crazy does he have to be, how insane, to think there's hope for any of this? You'd rather he lose the fire in his heart so he can live the life you chose for him? Moshi asked hoarsely. What's so bad about living in poverty away from the whims of the court? A person is no more than a drop of water in the sea, yet he believes that a mayfly can shake the skies. Look, now he understands how this will end. All it takes is the Emperor opening his mouth for his castle in the sky to crumble to nothing. For the price of 70,000 lives, neither Gumong nor those poor, stupid slave cultivators will ever again sacrifice their lives for Chonghua. That's some logic. Liu Jianxing's lips twisted in a smile. Whoever rules the nation should guard the nation. Please, noble Gongzi Shihejun, please stop meddling. Just let his laughable army fall apart. We'd rather a graceless life than an honorable death. We? We? Ever since his academy days, Gumong had said, his voice filled with longing, that he wished for a day when the world would change, that he wished he himself could change the ways of the world, even if just the slightest bit. As long as he could ignite a single sunbeam, he was willing to burn himself up in exchange, skin and bone. And here was Liu Jianxing saying that we would rather a graceless life than an honorable death. What right did he have? Moshi felt a flare of staggering rage, but this conflict with Liu Jianxing had already intensified to the point that a momentary slip would result in bloodshed. He didn't want to throw the events within the time mirror into chaos, so he forced himself to close his eyes. Only after some seconds did this overwhelming anger recede. Moshi slowly opened his eyes, black pupils fixing upon Liu Jianxing once more. He wanted to have a proper conversation with the man, but Liu Jianxing struck out at him yet again. Shihejun, leave him alone. I won't be able to keep him company in the future. Please, sir, have some mercy. Don't give him any more fatal hope. Moshi realized he couldn't look at Liu Jianxing another second. Even one glance would fan the embers of the rage he had just suppressed. He jerked away to stare at the swaying candle flame beside him. Stop leading him down that road, Liu Jianxing continued, fingers curling silently into fists. Moshi's gaze wandered from the candle to the two dice Liu Jianxing had been playing with. He wasn't really interested in the dice. In his pain and anger, he just wanted to find something to focus on. Somewhere to rest his gaze. He stared at those two white dice with red lacquer for a long time. Presently, he sensed that something wasn't quite right. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled as he was hit with the sudden realization. Moshi's spine stiffened. These dice were white with red lacquer, carved from rosewood, with an unremarkable little lotus motif in place of the sixth dot. Could they be Gumong's wooden dice? Indeed, back in the army, Gumong had liked playing Yezi cards and dice gambling. He'd envied the insignia of the Mo, Yue, and Murong clans, so he'd cleverly and sneakily invented one for himself. What he came up with was a Buddha's lotus. He didn't want to be mocked, so he only carved it on the set of dice he tossed with his brothers. It would be too vainglorious to put it anywhere else. Back then, Liu Jianxing had teased, "You're a grown man. Why are you using a little red lotus as a symbol?" "A lotus blooms for 7 days," Gumong explained with a grin. "Even though it's not long, its gentle fragrance can fill the skies. What's wrong with that?" Later yet, when Gumong and Moshi secretly set their blood seals and marked their necks with the sigil, they used the symbol Gumong had chosen. As Moshi realized all this, Liu Jianxing's voice sounded as if it were coming from an ocean away. Moshi paid no heed to what he was saying. His fingers were shaking, itching to grab the dice and examine them thoroughly. "Shihejun." Moshi ignored him. "Let Mong-ar go," Liu Jianxing continued. "If you really care for him and see him as a person, stop stringing him along, forcing him to slaughter and sacrifice for your sakes. Let him go." Swallowing thickly, Moshi managed to rein in his impulse. After some silence, he turned away from the dice, face pale. Looking back at Liu Jianxing, he murmured, "With this plan you've made for him, Are you so certain he'll walk the path you've arranged, living the rest of his life free as a wild crane? What other path is open to him? Moshi stared dark-eyed into Lu Jianxing's face. Have you never thought he might defect? Lu Jianxing looked at him in confusion. He seemed to find the idea almost laughable. What nonsense are you talking? Mong-ar, defect? Do you not know what kind of person he is? Then surely you know how important you and those 100,000 cultivators are in his heart. Lu Jianxing's face went pale. After a momentary silence, he looked up in clear disbelief. There's no way, he said stiffly. Moshi assessed every inch of his face, taking in Lu Jianxing's reactions. I know him, Lu Jianxing said. It doesn't matter what state he's in. He would never do that. He... Is that so? Moshi asked. You've never heard of him acting strangely in the 6 months you've been in prison? Lu Jianxing took a step back, a strange panic visible in his eyes. Just as expected, Lu Jianxing seemed to know something he didn't. This man was hiding a secret. Into the strained silence, Moshi said carelessly, without preamble, Lu Jianxing, you've seen Gumong since entering prison, haven't you? Lu Jianxing jerked as if struck by a hidden arrow. His head snapped up and his face drained of color. He quickly turned away. After a long beat, he said, What is Shihajun thinking? Mong-ar is a criminal now. How could he come visit me? Of course I want to see him again and talk about old times, but... He chuckled, smiling as if to mock himself. Better to dream it instead. It would feel more real in a dream. Moshi said nothing more. He'd gotten his answer in Lu Jianxing's reaction. His eyes darkened. He was almost certain that Gumong had met with Lu Jianxing in the past 6 months. But this made the whole thing even more bizarre. How could Gumong, a demoted official monitored by His Imperial Majesty's spies, manage to get past all the guards in the Imperial prison and enter Lu Jianxing's cell? I'm going to ask you one last time, Moshi said. Lu Jianxing, Gumong really hasn't come to see you? A pause. He hasn't. And you haven't endured the slightest injustice? I haven't. Moshi knew he wouldn't get a reasonable answer however he asked. In the end, they failed to have a meaningful conversation. Neither would convince the other, nor cede to him. Moshi strode out of the dim and cold inner cell of the prison. The door clanged shut behind him, enchanted iron chains sealing Lu Jianxing's cell once more. Before Moshi left for good, he turned to take a final look at Lu Jianxing. The man sat in the murky halo of the oil lamp, his head bowed and his eyes closed. As Moshi turned to go, Lu Jianxing looked up once more. Wait a minute. Moshi pursed his thin lips and gazed sidelong at him. What is it? Lu Jianxing gritted his teeth. One more thing. Since you're here, I also have a question for you. Go ahead. Lu Jianxing hesitated. The question had been bottled up in his heart for a terribly long time, so long it had practically rotted there. If he didn't ask it now, he would never get another chance. Finally, clenching his jaw, he said, It's been so many years. I've always wanted to know. You and... Moshi could guess from Lu Jianxing's expression and tone what this was about. He stood motionless, calmly waiting for him to continue. You and Mong-ar, are you two? What he wanted to ask was too unspeakable, and it involved his childhood friend no less. No matter how brazen Lu Jianxing was, he couldn't help but stammer. Are you two? Yes, Moshi said. The confirmation from Moshi's own mouth seemed to deal a blow to Lu Jianxing. None of their prior exchange had made him so dizzy as that single yes from Moshi. He and Gumong had served together for many years. In truth, Liu Jianxing had clued in to certain things long ago. It was just that, out of respect for Gumong, he was too embarrassed to ask about it outright. But just because he'd never asked didn't mean he was stupid or blind. He'd seen how Moshi and Gumong looked at each other too many times. If it had been once or twice, he could have blamed his own overactive imagination. But with the frequency of these gazes, he could never convince himself there was nothing between them. He had too often seen Moshi wait for Gumong to patrol together, and when the two of them returned, the outer corners of Gumong's eyes would frequently be a little red, his voice slightly husky. Once, by the light of the bonfire, he had even seen the telltale mark of a bite on Gumong's neck. But conjecture was conjecture. Liu Jianxing still felt a little short of breath to hear Moshi directly admit as much in front of him. He took a few steps back and sat heavily on the stone bed. Mong Er is insane. He was doing just fine. Why did he have to get mixed up with you? He sounded exhausted. Liu Jianxing slumped over, burying his face in his hands and rubbing his cheeks. Doesn't he know his own station? He rasped. Why? Why does he always insist on striving for the most unattainable? What a lunatic. He was crazy for real. He paused, bone-tired. What point is there in chasing self-destruction, like a moth flying into flame? Why is it that all his life's desires, whether goals or people, are all so... He swallowed, the final syllables falling from between his lips. Absurd. In the flickering light, Moshi looked at him. At last he said, "Don't blame him. Between the two of us, it wasn't that he was striving for me. I'm the one who was seeking my own destruction. It was I who clung to him." With that, he turned on his heel, black robes billowing as he strode up the stairs and disappeared into the corridor's darkness. Night had fallen hours ago. Moshi returned to Shiha Manor, but he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Finally, he snapped upright in bed, draped a robe over his shoulders, and opened the door. The sky was clear as water, stars like loose diamonds filling the dark blue dome of night. He shrouded himself within a hooded cape and went straight back to Apricot Mansion. It would be unwise for him to again show his face to Gumong if he hoped to uncover more buried secrets. Still, he couldn't stop himself from yearning for a few more glimpses of Gumong from 8 years ago. A word of... It's probably a little bit of both. Yeah, a lot of people do want to tell Gumong what to do. Okay, we're on chapter 87, which is called Mysterious Visitor. The hour was late. The chatter of women and plucking of strings rose and fell without cease within Apricot Mansion. Moshi headed straight for the balcony where Gumong resided. He wasn't worried about being seen by others. Yue Chunqing's paternal grandfather had made the cloak Moshi wore using feathers of the traceless bird. Though these feathers were known to lose their effectiveness when plucked from the bird's body, the late Yue patriarch was a grandmaster artificer who had successfully preserved some properties of the plumes. This cloak could render its wearer invisible thrice. Moshi jumped down from the eaves of the roof and landed soundlessly upon the balcony flourishing with flowers. The 8-grid tortoiseshell and bamboo door was open wide. Gumong hadn't called Miss Fei Tian, the pipa player, back. He was alone in the room. Gumong sat at the table with his eyes closed, elbow propped on the table and cheek pressed in one hand. He looked as if he were asleep, yet also seemed keenly alert, his long lashes fluttering with every exhale. Smoke rose in spirals from the incense burner at his side, blurring and gentling his features. Moshi looked him over, inch by inch, from the tails of his eyes and the tips of his brows to his lips and chin. The candlelight's glow was like orange butterflies alighting on the tip of his nose. Wrapped in the invisibility cloak, Moshi approached him with his breath held and attention rapt, staring down at his too familiar face. He suddenly understood how Murong Lian could depend on ephemera so deeply, despite knowing it was a poison that he shouldn't touch, knowing it could dissolve one's willpower and erode one's strength, yet still choosing pleasure over life. His addiction to Gumong had sunk into his bone and marrow, deep as intoxicating smoke. The bookmark art, the bookmark that I got from the Book 7 special edition, the art is starting to make more sense to me, because Murong Lian is featured on it, and he's smoking, and there's smoke like billowing around them. So like here's Moshi, and there's the smoke up there on the other side. Yeah. I feel like that makes sense to me now. Henry, you're so right. Like, Moshi does not really fully think about all the ramifications of the class difference. He sort of, yeah, that it does feel very realistic. Wrapped in the invisibility cloak, Moshi approached him with his breath. Wait, I already read that, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah. There came a knock at the door. Moshi and Gumong snapped out of their trance at nearly the same time. Moshi took a step back. Gumong stood to open the door. Moshi thought it would be another little peepaw playing minx. But when the door opened and Gumong turned to let the newcomer in, Moshi found it was no songstress at all, but rather a figure in a black cloak, much like his own. This person wasn't using an invisibility cloak, but they had hidden their face completely behind a gold and silver mask. The only detail to be gleaned from their tall and upright figure was that this individual was likely male. Who? Moshi had scarcely finished the thought when the cloaked man spoke. His voice was obviously distorted by a voice-changing spell. It came out as an uncanny rasp. Did anything strange happen today? The man asked. Gumong was silent for a moment, then answered no. Is that so? The cloaked man replied thoughtfully. No one came to visit? No, Gumong said again. At his insistence, the masked man dropped the matter. He placed a bundle wrapped in cloth on the table. I brought this for you. You should change into it. Gumong turned down a corner of the bundle, but then quickly folded it back up. What do you mean by this? If you're going there, you'd best prepare, hadn't you? Gumong's fingertips hovered over the package. At these words, he tensed, his fingers curling around the cloth. This only left Moshi more perplexed. Gumong had always been the picture of steady composure. If the sky should fall on him, he would probably use it as a blanket. Yet the cloaked man had made Gumong blanch with just this handful of words. If I tell you what's there, I doubt you'll believe it, the cloaked man said. Tonight, I'll take you there in person, so you can see the truth with your own eyes. However warm and soft the candlelight, it brought no color to Gumong's pale face. He seemed to suppress some complicated emotion until even his lips were bloodless. He lowered his lashes, his shoulders trembling. In the end, he took the cloth bundle and disappeared behind the screen. When Gumong stepped out, he was wearing clothes indistinguishable from those of the cloaked man, a dark cape embroidered in pale gold, with a swirling cloud and thunder pattern obscured his form completely. Let's go. The two departed the boudoir of lingering fragrance, one after another. Moshi followed in their wake. This brothel played host to all sorts. The madam and maidens working here all had 3 don'ts engraved into their hearts. Don't look, don't ask, don't listen. When 2 conspicuously dressed men... Why can't I turn the page? No. When 2 conspicuously dressed men walked through the corridors of the brothel, the servant girls didn't show the slightest hint of surprise. They merely lowered their heads and made obeisance and kept their heads down until the men were gone. Gumong and that black-garbed man didn't speak as they walked. The 2 kept the distance of strangers. The black-garbed man walked in front, with Gumong wholly silent as he followed behind. If the black-garbed man had any martial abilities, they weren't obvious, and he kept his aura well concealed. Moshi couldn't probe his spiritual energy flow any further without exposing his own position. He could only tail them to see where they were going. When they had walked for the time it took to burn an incense stick, their direction became clear, and the doubts in Moshi's heart deepened. This was the way to Warrior Soul Mountain? As he expected, they eventually stopped at the foot of Warrior Soul Mountain. There were no guards at the entrance 8 years ago. Nevertheless, the graves of generations of Chonghua's heroic dead stood at the summit of the mountain. There was still a formless barrier at the gate to denote respect and reverence. This barrier could disperse almost every disguise or invisibility spell. Moshi could track them no further. Gumong lowered the hood of his cloak and gazed at the winding stone path. Pines and bamboo swayed on either side, and bright moonlight shone through the tips of their branches to scatter over the ancient limestone steps. "What is it?" asked the black-garbed man. "Just thinking about how I'll be leaving soon, and my hands will be stained with the blood of Chonghua's soldiers. He said no more, but Moshi's heart clenched. Sure enough, Gumong had been lying when they'd talked. He had already decided to defect. He was already certain that in the future his hands would be stained with the blood of his former comrades. Gumong, why did you do it? Who is this mysterious black-clothed man at your side?" Moshi's eyes burned red with the desire to snatch away that man's mask. He squandered the impulse down. Moshi had a feeling that, were he to remove this mask, many questions might be answered, and many mysteries explained. But the trail would end there. He would be unable to discover more. What he learned would not make up for what he would lose. Swallowing thickly, Moshi endured the rushing impatience in his heart. He heard the black-garbed man speak. "Chonghua's current state is as you've seen. You experienced it yourself after Phoenix Cry Mountain. When you and your army fell from grace, all you found were those who would kick you when you were down, none who would offer help in your hour of need." The black-garbed man noticed Gumong about to protest and waved a hand. "You don't need to tell me that if Shihajun were here, he would side with you. His support is useless. You're a clever person. You understand that Chonghua has always been ruled by the nobles. You cannot change anything with your power alone." Moshi's ears seemed to ring. This person was clearly encouraging Gumong to defect. He was describing Chonghua's current attitudes, telling Gumong, other than Shihajun, no one would support you. Was this man from the Liao Kingdom? No, that was impossible. How could anyone from Liao move so easily through Chonghua to enter this deserted place? How could anyone from Liao so openly stand in front of Gumong without stirring up his intense disgust and reproach? Unless... Unless Gumong trusted this black-garbed man more than the nation of Chonghua. But how could such trust be built in a couple of months with just a couple of words? Had Gumong already had dealings with some Liao Kingdom spy since long ago? How could this be? "It's come to this," the man said. "The pieces are already in place for your treason. This move cannot be taken back. Moshi's throat seemed to be filled with cloying blood. On this one short day, 8 years ago, on the eve of Gumong's defection, so much had happened that was buried by the sands of time. His Imperial Majesty's cold ruthlessness, Liu Jianxing's stubborn devotion to his aim, Gumong's many worries, as well as this black-garbed man undisguisedly pushing Gumong onto the path to hell. Gumong heard every word the man said, but he showed no reaction. The night wind blew harder, buffeting Gumong's wide sleeves like fallen flowers in the grip of a sudden gust. The cold evening seemed to chill him, his fingers curling as if he wanted to tuck them into his cuffs. The black-garbed man reached out from beneath his dark sleeves and wrapped one fine-boned hand around Gumong's. Moshi wasn't the only one stunned by this movement. Gumong's head whipped around, dark eyes wide in shock. He wanted to pull away, yet didn't move. "General Gu," the black-garbed man said gravely, "none who seek to blaze a new path have hands unsullied by blood." As he spoke, he lowered his lashes to carefully examine Gumong's fingers and palm. "You know what the nobles of Changhua are like. As I said, you're a clever person. I don't need to say much. Go up the mountain and take a look." The black-garbed man paused. "It is my hope that after you've seen it, you'll understand what can and cannot be believed, and what is and is not worth the price." You don't know whether to laugh or cry. Yep. Gumong closed his eyes. His cloak snapped in the night wind as it whipped past. In the quiet night, Moshi wished so deeply that Gumong would flatly refuse, that he would push the black-garbed man away and say, "I don't want to defect. Let me think about it would be enough." But Gumong said nothing. In this heartbreaking, bone-shattering silence, Moshi's heart chilled. "I understand," Gumong said. "Let's go." With that, he strode through the barrier on Warrior Soul Mountain, his black robes billowing like clouds of ink as he ascended the mountain without looking back. Moshi didn't know how long the pair spent on Warrior Soul Mountain. He was numb all over. A single day in the time mirror had opened a box stuffed with 8 years of secrets. They came tumbling down on him like an avalanche. This man, who had always stood so tall and upright, as if he could bear any burden, found himself leaning against the stone wall just to keep on his feet. Though he managed to stand, his vision flashed dark. These events of the past tore at his tendons, ground his bones into dust. In the end, Moshi slid slowly to the ground, doubling over beside the limestone mountain path. He raised a trembling hand to cover his face. The sheer number of threads he was trying to follow had him tangled in a mess. How cold-blooded and detached would he have to be to maintain his composure after suffering such a shock? As dawn began to peek through the clouds, Gumong and that black-garbed man descended the mountain. Just as before, the man walked in front, with Gumong trailing behind. An exhausted Moshi looked up through eyes spider-webbed with blood vessels. He faced the faint light of dawn as he watched those two draw near, then pass back through the barrier. Moshi's mind had been thrown into disarray. He felt utterly destroyed. At that moment, even this darling of the heavens wouldn't have been able to recite anything from the book Legends of Divine Catastrophe he'd memorized in childhood. Despite it all, in the hazy mist of morning, he could tell from a single glance that Gumong had been crying. Gumong was an indomitable man, but a strong spirit wasn't necessarily contained in a strong body. Gumong's body was warm and soft, his black eyes as gentle as a queen of the night blooming amid darkness, easily shedding tears from sorrow or stimulation. Moshi had explored Gumong's body as thoroughly as he'd explored his own mind. Engraved upon his memories was Gumong in all his moods. The instant he saw the faint redness at the delicate outer corners of Gumong's eyes, Moshi knew Gumong had wept. For whom, or for what, was he crying? For the past he was helpless to change, or the future on which he had staked everything? The two men came to a stop at the foot of the mountain. The black-garbed man looked up at the sky. "It's late. If we stay any longer, we'll be discovered." "Yes." Gumong's voice was slightly hoarse. He performed an extremely formal obeisance toward the black-garbed man. "I've seen all that I should. Many thanks for tonight's accompaniment. Farewell." "No need to thank me. You as well. Take care." In a flash, the black-garbed man leapt up with Qinggong and vanished into the breaking light of day. Gumong turned to take one last look at Warrior Soul Mountain, wreathed in mist. Then he tightened his black cloak around his shoulders as if it were hiding some precious secret. He lowered his head and strode away. Moshi had no need to hide after Gumong left. He removed the concealment spells and walked up Warrior Soul Mountain alone to search for clues. He made for the restricted area. Since Gumong had told him it seemed familiar, Moshi could believe he had most likely gone there. The restricted area on Warrior Soul Mountain was built with the strength of the imperial family, but it was simply a prototype at this point. It wouldn't be difficult to break the barrier. Moshi stood outside the deserted mountain area, his fingertips brushing the glowing light array. It was high level, but still no more than an ordinary blocking barrier, nowhere near as impenetrable as the one 8 years hence. But here in the mirror, as an uninvited guest no less, his spiritual energy and magical abilities had been greatly impaired. The array wasn't perfect, but he couldn't break it. The barrier glowed relentlessly in front of Warrior Soul Mountain's restricted area, as if in mockery of this wandering soul who had come from the future. Chonghua's current state is what it is. You cannot change anything with your power alone. General Gu, none of those who seek to blaze a new path have hands unsullied by blood. You know what the nobles of Chonghua are like. The pieces are already in place for your treason. This move cannot be taken back. Who was the black-garbed man? His words were intended to remind Gumong that Chonghua held bloodlines sacrosanct above all, to convince him to pledge allegiance to a new ruler. He sounded exactly like a Liao Kingdom agent trying to convince Gumong to defect. But did Gumong really collude with those from the Liao Kingdom so early? Moshi could think of one other possibility. The restricted area on Warrior Soul Mountain was built according to the imperial family's instructions. Perhaps some rebellious noble saw something within it, realized what the emperor was planning, and developed treasonous intentions. So he brought Gumong here to witness it for himself. All the better to cause him anguish and shatter his resolve, prompting him to make a clean break with Chonghua's nobility and blaze a dark path. But this line of reasoning also had its holes. Many factions jockeyed for power in Chonghua's imperial court, but which noble would truly want to see the system that honored bloodlines above all overturned? His heart was battered by one question after another. Moshi felt he was trapped in a dense and disorienting fog. He groped about within it, but had no way of capturing the truth. In the end, he couldn't uncover the secret on the opposite side of the barrier. The only thing he was sure of was that Gumong's defection was far from the simple manner it seemed. By the time he returned to Shiha Manor, Moshi still hadn't completely recovered. Shuangqiu, holding a plate of tea and snacks, carefully approached. "My lord," she said tentatively. "My lord, did you not sleep well last night?" Moshi didn't make a sound. He knew how unsightly and ridiculous he looked. He used to think that the ancient notes regarding the deadliness of the time mirror were preposterous, but he now realized they were no exaggeration. Gumong had been completely hypnotized by the illusion. while Moshi couldn't escape the torment of the mirror, even as a bystander who had been pulled into the past. Everyone had regrets in life, and all manner of secrets were concealed within the twists and turns of a lifetime. When faced with these regrets, wouldn't anyone who returned to the past want to try and mend it? When faced with these secrets, wouldn't anyone from the future be astonished? When someone traveled back in time within the mirror, they would realize that seas could rise or mountains could fall by the whims of a single word or misstep. Or they might end up like Moshi, learning that the reality he'd assumed true was but a shoddy facade that had fooled him for 8 long years, and yet the truth eluded him. Moshi felt as if his head were splitting. The pain was about to drive him mad. "My lord," Shuangqiu started, "you—" He was gripping his teacup too hard. It shattered with a sudden squeeze of his fingers. Shuangqiu screamed as blood ran from the cuts, streaming over the pale skin of his hand. My lord," she stammered. "I'll help you at once. Get out." "My lord?" Moshi's dark eyes were so bloodshot, they looked to be veiled in red clouds. He stared at the blood trickling without pause from his hand and rasped, "Get lost." Shuangqiu didn't dare talk back. She hastily tidied the plates and cups and scurried out. Moshi didn't wipe the blood from his hand, hoping the mild pain could help clear his head. He desperately needed to clear his head. There were 2 days until Lu Jianxing's execution. He could still bear it. He wouldn't disrupt the past inside the time mirror over a momentary impulse. He hoped Murong Chuyi and the rest wouldn't defeat the Shangao and rescue them from the mirror so quickly. The present had already buried this past he was in. He wanted to stay longer in this world of 8 years ago. Gu Mong once said he would choose to burn brilliantly, even if the fire reduced him to ash. Moshi didn't have such a grandiose dream, but even if the agony should grind him to dust, he would choose to dig out the truth. Well, that's the end of the chapter. It's 4:58, so I think I have to stop here. The next chapter, chapter 88, is called Execution. Now, sure, that's the execution of Lu Jianxing, but I also wonder if that means, like, the execution of a plan. Like, is there a double meaning? I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like it is a good stopping point because I want to know what's going to happen, but it's not really a cliffhanger. It's just like, we're in the middle of things, but we've stopped. If I read the next chapter, I'm sure it's going to end at like some crazy point, and I'm, so. So yeah, it looks like there will be like, yeah, I guess we're going to have 2 more streams and then finish this book, is what I'm thinking. So, excuse me. That was a fun one today. Totally, just super fun. All the laughs. Yeah. And now I'm just like, who is the cloaked figure? I don't know if we've, like, met this character yet, or they're just a mystery character and we can't possibly figure it out at this point, but, like, the brain is spinning. But, yeah, I guess I'll see y'all next week, and we'll find out more, maybe, or maybe we won't really find out anything yet because of the way Meat Bun is. So yeah. Have a good rest of your week. I will see y'all on Monday for chapter 88. Bye.